With Donald Trump back for a second term, his use of unpredictable high-pressure tactics, like the looming threat of 25% tariffs, is shaking Canada to its core. As the madman theory goes, if you want to get what you want, you have to make your opponents believe you're willing to go further than they think. From auto manufacturing to oil and gas, dairy, steel, and even immigration, Canada's economy depends on its relationship with the U.S., and now Trump is playing hardball. Will his unpredictable tactics force Canada to the negotiating table, or is it just a strategy to win the upper hand in trade deals? Trump's vision of Canada as the 51st state may sound extreme, but his approach to negotiations has always been about pushing the limits. By threatening tariffs and claiming a better life for Canadians under U.S. rule, Trump is hoping to play on Canada's vulnerability and get it to make concessions it otherwise wouldn't. The Bank of Canada is slashing interest rates, but with tariffs looming, there's little they can do. The depreciating loonie is making matters worse, driving inflation up and increasing the cost of imports. Canada's economy could soon face a perfect storm, and Trump's tactics are making it harder to weather it. And here's where Trump's strategy gets more intense. The fentanyl crisis is front and center. Trump's team is using this issue to escalate, suggesting Canada isn't doing enough to crack down on border security. The message is clear. Give us what we want or face the consequences. With Ontario and federal elections on the horizon, Canadian leaders are under pressure, not only from domestic issues, but from this looming trade war. The economic chaos caused by these tariffs, coupled with a plunging currency, could force Canada into desperate negotiations, giving Trump more leverage to impose further demands. Targets Canadian industries like auto manufacturing and dairy, forcing Canada to the bargaining table or face severe economic fallout. Canada is also facing challenges in retaining foreign direct investment. Take Honda, for example. In 2024, the company committed to a $15 billion investment in Ontario to electrify its operations, one of its largest ever investments in Canada. This included creating electric vehicle assembly and battery manufacturing plants. But now, with Trump's tariffs on Canadian-made EVs on the horizon, along with the possible end of EV mandates and government buyer incentives, Honda's Alliston plant, which exports 80% of its vehicles, faces major risks. Trump's unpredictable, high-pressure tactics, reflective of his madman theory approach, only add to the uncertainty. It may force Honda and other companies to reconsider their future in Canada. As Canadian elections loom, the stakes couldn't be higher. With Trump's tariffs potentially hitting Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and other leaders are scrambling to manage both domestic pressures and the escalating trade conflict. Trump's unpredictable behavior is making it harder for Canadian officials to plot their next move, leaving the country at the mercy of his high-risk tactics. With tariffs threatening to disrupt Canada's industries, the risk of inflation, rising unemployment, and a deepening housing crisis is becoming more real by the day. If Trump's tactics succeed in destabilizing Canada's economy, the possibility of a prolonged recession grows. This isn't just a trade dispute, it's a high-stakes negotiation where the outcome could change Canada's future. Canada's future is hanging in the balance. Will Trump's madman theory push Canada to the brink, or will Canadian leaders find a way to hold firm against the pressure?
Canada's stand against Trump's tariffs.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships. We will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure our countries continue to be the best neighbors in the world.
The economic impact of Trump's 25% tariffs on Canada. What you need to know. Will Trump's tariffs sink Canada's economy? Imagine waking up tomorrow and suddenly everything you buy from cars to your morning coffee costs 25% more. But that's not all. Canada is already struggling with slow economic growth, a housing crisis, and a growing unemployment rate. And to top it all off, immigration has become a vital lifeline for Canada's economy. So, what happens if Trump's tariffs cut off that lifeline too? Let's understand tariffs and their economic impact. Let's start with the basics. What's a tariff? It's essentially a tax on imported goods. Think of it like a price hike imposed by a government on products coming from other countries. So, if Trump slaps a 25% tariff on Canadian steel, that means American manufacturers would pay 25% more for that steel. And guess who's going to feel it? Canadian consumer. And the American consumer too, as these costs usually trickle down. But why would a country do this? Tariffs are meant to protect local industries by making imported goods more expensive, nudging consumers to buy local products instead. In theory, it creates jobs at home by boosting domestic manufacturing. But here's the thing. Higher prices don't just hurt consumers, they hurt the economy. And in Canada, this is a big deal. So now, is there any economic fallout for Canada? According to recent reports, these tariffs could cut half a percentage point off Canada's GDP. That's a major hit, especially when we're already dealing with slow economic growth. In fact, G0 Media predicts that Canada will see higher inflation and job losses, particularly in the auto and manufacturing sectors. Let's see a chart showing the projected GDP decline and inflation rise. Canada's economy is already under pressure. We're relying heavily on immigrant labor, especially in key sectors like construction and healthcare. But Trump's tariffs could end up discouraging foreign investment and make it harder for Canadian businesses to access the affordable goods they need. Now let's hit the impact of these price increases and economic strain. The question to which everyone is looking for answer is how these tariffs will hit you. First up, steel. Canada is one of the largest suppliers of steel to the US, and with a 25% tariff slapped on steel exports, the price of construction materials will skyrocket. This could make everything from homes to bridges more expensive to build, and that's just the beginning. And it's not just construction. Think about the cars you drive. With tariffs on vehicles and parts, Canadian automakers could be forced to raise prices, passing the burden straight to consumers. And then, of course, there's agriculture. Prices for everything from groceries to restaurant meals could rise dramatically. So if you've been looking at that new car or eyeing up a steak for dinner, get ready to rethink those plans. Now let's analyze the indirect impact of these tariffs, or the ripple effect. Here's where it gets trickier. The indirect effects of these tariffs could be even worse. Trump's trade war with China, Mexico, and other countries means more than just higher prices. It disrupts global supply chains. And guess who gets caught in the middle? That's right, Canada. Here is the global map showing how US tariffs impact Canada, Mexico, and China. As reported by ICIS in November 2024, the knock-on effects could mean higher inflation rates in Canada, as the costs of goods from China and Mexico, which Canadians also rely on, get more expensive. Add to that the chaos in international trade, and you've got a recipe for disaster. So, what does this all mean for Canada? The forecasts aren't pretty. The G0 Media analysis suggests that the tariffs could shave off nearly half a percentage point from Canada's GDP. And inflation? It's expected to climb sharply, with consumers seeing higher prices across the board. In short, these tariffs could cost Canada billions of dollars in lost trade, higher production costs, and increased consumer prices. Canadians will surely feel the impact in their wallets. If tariffs go up, expect prices to soar. Cars, home appliances, even things like grocery prices, all could be 25% more expensive. If you're in the housing market, forget it. With inflation rising, the cost of construction materials will climb, and those sky-high house prices will only get higher. Here is the infographic of rising prices across various sectors: cars, housing, groceries. But it's not just the consumer products you'll notice, it's also job insecurity. According to economists from ICIS, Canadian companies that rely on cross-border trade could find themselves losing market share or even moving production to cheaper regions. What does that mean? Job cuts, layoffs, and higher unemployment. Now, add immigration into the mix. Canada has increasingly relied on immigrants to fuel its economy, particularly in sectors like technology, manufacturing, and healthcare. Immigration is also vital to support the housing market, with many new immigrants contributing to the demand for rental properties and homes. But here's the rub. As Trump's tariffs hit Canadian businesses, fewer jobs may be available for new immigrants. And with housing prices already out of control, imagine what would happen if the construction sector slows down even more. The housing crisis could become unmanageable, with fewer homes being built and more Canadians priced out of the market. And it's not just the price of things that will go up, it's unemployment. A slower economy means fewer jobs, and many workers could be replaced by automation or outsourced to cheaper labor markets. Manufacturing jobs that were once the backbone of Canadian communities could be lost to the US or overseas, especially if companies can't compete with the inflated prices caused by tariffs. As Canada's job market shrinks, especially in sectors that depend on cross-border trade, there's a growing sense that the government might not have the resources to create new opportunities for the displaced workforce. But here's the twist. It's not all doom and gloom just yet. Canada can weather the storm, but only if swift action is taken. The question is, will Canada's leadership be able to turn this economic ship around in time? And this brings us to the 2025 Canadian elections. With the Liberal government's leadership now in transition, how will Canada respond to Trump's aggressive tariffs? Can the new leadership navigate through a political minefield, balancing the pressure of slow economic growth and global trade tensions? Or will Canadians demand a change? As the election season heats up, we'll see how Canada's leaders handle this growing crisis. Will they tighten trade agreements with other nations? Can they reduce reliance on imports and build stronger domestic industries? And what about all the immigrants who have become the backbone of Canada's economy? How will they be affected? Trump's tariffs are about to test Canada like never before. With economic uncertainty, the housing crisis, and a growing unemployment rate, Canada's future is hanging in the balance. So what will the government do next? Will the new leadership keep its cool, or will these tariffs shake up the Canadian economy in ways we can't predict? What will Canada do next? Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into Canada's economic survival under Trump's tariffs and the 2025 election battle. Stay tuned for more updates and insights. We've got you covered.